Now, we're so grateful to have so many of you join us today on this webinar, which is about gender, diversity and literature. And what we're hoping to do today is to take you on a journey, helping us to understand more deeply why it matters to us to talk about gender and diversity as it relates to literature. Now, over the past year or so, we have been working with the VIDA Counts to gather data on the numbers of women working in the publishing industry and female writers who are recognized for their contribution to literature in literary awards. Now, centers across the world have been involved in helping us bring this data together so that we can start to understand the gender terrain in which we sit. Now, this first layer of data gathered so far shows us that women are underrepresented in both publishing and also through recognition in literary awards. Now, I don't want to go into the VIDA count too much right now. We will talk about that later. And thankfully, we have Tanya here, who is from PEN's Women's Writers Committee, who will share more with us later on. Someone still has their mic on and it seems to be slightly interfering with the, thank you. Now, to understand VIDA count, to help us understand this data and to allow us to unpick it, we need to understand how these numbers that come through the VIDA count come to be. Now, what are the factors that create or perpetuate these numbers? Now, there are some who may think that these numbers will just even out over time, but the reality is that without the proactive and deliberate action or involvement of organizations like ours, access to literature, the joy of literature, access to the breadth of our imaginations and our collective ideas will always remain in the hands of the few. So our action and our work in this area is really critical, and it matters as an international association of writers. So today, we will begin to understand what issues with intersectional backgrounds face. We will begin to understand how these challenges are not an isolated individual experience, but are instead inbuilt into our institutional structures. We will help you to understand that an individual's capacity to face these challenges is not shaped or determined by an individual's tenacity or agency to overcome these barriers, and that the process of being able to pursue writing in any serious way is very much determined by one's background. Now, the stories that our two authors share with us today are emblematic and illustrative of a reality for many female and diverse writers. Both are published and established authors and writers in their fields of literature. Now, after they have shared their personal stories, we will open the floor for questions. Now, in terms of the format for today's discussion, I'm now going to open up the floor and invite Nayrouz Qarmout to talk to us for 15 minutes. During this presentation, Nayrouz will take us through her story. Nayrouz is an author, a journalist, and a women's rights campaigner. Born in Damascus, a Palestinian refugee, she returned to the Gaza Strip as part of the 1994 Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement, where she now lives. Her first book, The Sea Cloak, is a collection of 11 stories. It draws from her own experiences growing up in a Syrian refugee camp, as well as her current life in Gaza. These stories stitch together a patchwork of different perspectives into what it means to be a woman in Palestine today. Now, as Mira has suggested, I would please ask you to share any questions that you have into the chat box so that we can come back to them when Nayrouz and Mona have given us their presentations. And Nayrouz, I welcome you to today's online training webinar. It's really great to have you here and to have your participation, and thank you for sharing your experiences. They will help us to expand our learning as to what it means to surmount these challenges and the kinds of challenges that you face. So thank you and welcome to our discussion today. So I hand the floor over to you, and I'm going to now mute myself. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I'm so glad to be with you all. And thank you, Pamela, for your introduction. I'll try to be short in my presentation. I'm not that heavy, all here. As a writer, we always know that we have chosen a difficult way, and it wouldn't be easy to express your ideas when you have this differ. What is the diversity you have that you own your vision about your surrounding society? And you cannot build your own stories without keeping your principles in thought and thinking. Sometimes you feel that you can beat the narrow space they give it to you, and there is no tough confrontation with the various elites of the society, of those segments that make up the collective language of the same society. Other times, with disclosure occurs by raising sensitive issues that touch on certain segments, certain concepts. The collision occurs at the art of writing and composing. You are trying all the time to present your idea boldly and with a parade that can penetrate the minds of most of us. Issues affecting customs, traditions, and understanding the role of religion in construction and practice. It's a very complex process. It takes your energy completely and exhausts you until you get this idea properly. Of course, we take into account the difference of opinion from one writer to another, perhaps the quality of the environment in which she creates, the challenges she faces in her subjects. It's related to class, the organ of identity, the prevailing thought, and the political trends that dominate a specific level of thinkers and politicians around her. The form of conservative thought differs from one region to another, but despite its different manifestation, it maintains the same content, making one measurement indicator. We as women, for example, have a guaranteed right called freedom of movement, and this is what collides customs and traditions and the wrong religious understanding on the one hand, and the occupation on the other. This makes it difficult for women to travel. This was compounded by factors of different organ, but which formed a single image called the siege. And that's what we are all live under it, the siege. It's a very big word, and it makes a special philosophy how to resist all the time. And do not forget the interest of the political regimes which govern everyone's movement. To live in an occupied place means to resist all the time. Once more, I have to say this. In the publishing industry, none of the parties to the process comes out satisfied, but at least you can finally make your voice heard, and this is a big thing. In the publishing, we try all the time as a woman, say we are here. We are always confronted with our traditional rules, spontaneously translating this into our literary works and productions. This is what we suffer, and this is what we write for: freedom, equality, and living in dignity. Get a suitable education opportunity without monopolizing opportunities except on the basis of capabilities. The right of self-determination, owning your own choice of liberation, is the right for all societies and peoples, and how people live from decades under the pressure of diaspora. Thank you.
Thank you, Nayrouz. That was really enlightening. I think that we, through your presentations, are starting to get small sense, a little sense of the types of issues that are out there for writers of various backgrounds, various identities, various migrations, various estrangements. And I really love that term, Mona, in terms of estrangement. I think that Nayrouz would also find that term very hugely relevant to her experience as well. And I think that, you know, coming together today, it's really crucial that in recognizing the fact that you're published authors, so you have had the social, you have somewhere that you have been in the right time, at the right place, perhaps. Sometimes I think, is it about, you know, this whole question of social mobility and how social mobility and access to social mobility, to access to the literary recognition, access to the courses, access to the Arts Council are things that really do matter in the context of getting your work out there and beyond the kind of the handful of otherwise people who would want to be interested or are interested in your work. So I think that this is one of the core issues that I think that we as PEN International have to respond to, because it is about access to social mobility that enables those girls who are going on to university and then come out of university and then are faced with an inability to get there, to find publishers. Mona, you mentioned the fact that you were, you found a publisher really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. But I think that if we looked at those statistics, I think that if we were to interview people of color, writers of color, to say, you know, where do you feel, how do you feel that you have the access, or what is your access at the moment, it would give us a very different feel from the mainstream in terms of how that access works. And I think that even if we look at diversity within that mainstream group, I think that we will see very closely, and I think someone mentioned the word elitism. I think Nayrouz, you mentioned the word elitism. I think that is very pervasive in the world of literature, and in terms of how people are able to access the space is very much determined by knowing the elites. And how do we, as writers, as women, as diverse communities on the margins of that debate, open up that conversation. So I thank you so wholeheartedly. I don't want to talk too much, but I want to now open up the floor for questions. So please put your hands up on or physically, whichever one you prefer, or technologically. But please put your hands up to let me know as to who would like to ask a question. Thank you.
Nayrouz, I would have a question for you. Can you tell us a bit about the Palestinian literary scene, and how do men appreciate you, women writers and poets of Gaza and Palestine?
Thank you for your question. Palestinian literary, it's not start from this time. It's before the Nakba diaspora, and since the diaspora, and after it. And from time to time, it's a change. That it was just speaking about the political life of Palestinian, and then after we have this agreement with Israel about peace, we start to talk about our social life and our stories as a people, as a daily life, as a man, as a woman, as a child. All of this have this big impact in the Palestinian literature. But it differs from space to space, because, we have this fragment people inside Palestine, in West Bank, in Gaza, in 48 areas, out in camps or in countries as refugees, and all of this build our story. My vision that even of all of this, we have to talk about ourselves as women and talk about our experience, how we challenge all of this, how we can build our own identity, even it's a general situation we live in. What the second part of your question about? Men.
How men, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
how men appreciate your struggle
you
and
know, about the formal institutions and which always men control it, and they may not support us or just wanted to say, I don't know if you're right or not right. I don't know if I like the way you express your ideas. Some of them as individuals support us, and some they are trying to ignore us. But even of this, we try to continue our writing. Um, English Pen International give me this opportunity, by the way, by having this prize and have the publishing of my book. And it make a big difference in the street that youth, women wanted to see what this woman speaking about. I'm trying to speak about the freedom of women in work, in school, university, in movement, in her understanding to her religion, in understanding to her traditional and habits in the society. And all of this, she wants to liberate herself with her own idea, even against the occupation, without any fear, without to be frightened from the regime, from many components of all the system which make this big pressure on her all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nayrouz. And Shakira, please feel free to ask a question.
Thank you very much. Actually, this is not a question. I'm just want to thanks Mrs. Tuna to ask the question. Maybe this is the question for each and every female writer, how men appreciate them. So I'm just giving my thanks to her from my core of heart and from Pain Bangladesh Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shakira. Does anybody else have any questions? Virginia?
The question of, I've always said, I think patriarch, can you hear me? Yes. Patriarch has come so strong. There was a time when they could actually tolerate women writers trying to, I'm not quite sure if what it's like in other areas, but what I've heard and what I've seen and what I've experienced, I mean, coming from maybe the 80s to where we are now, I think patriarchy has come so strong on women writers to an extent of discouraging more women going into writing. That also includes journalism. I'm not quite sure if anyone would agree with me on that. In relation to the two presenters who've just presented, how is it in their countries?
Please, who would like to go first? Nayrouz, would you like to respond first?
I'm with her, yes, patriarch. And all of this is pressure us all the time. But I think this is what makes us to create our opinion in different way again. All the time we are trying to say the same idea in different way, in a new way, to express ourselves. They want to say you are mistaken. The way of my writing was all the time say, yes, we are people, we are human beings, and we are making a big mistake. And this mistake, which make us present and exist in this life, and this is which make to us to search about a new solution for our problems as people, as women. The woman just it's the weak part of the whole process. But I think the pressure on the all, in economic and even to having the knowledge, even to own your land, your opportunity. Just the woman may, she's the first one who face all of this, but all the people face it now. And I'm so happy that the woman who is defends all this right of all of these people. So I think against this patriarch, the woman now is strong more than before. And even she is not taking all of her rights, but this big thing she is doing now, telling the all that she is playing a very, very special role. And they will complete pressure us, but I think we will continue, and in a very, very strong way. You know, as writer women, we are all the time like praise our words, like you are renew the language. And this a very complicated process, because you know the society used to talk with a language that all agree with, and now while we are writing our stories, your poetry, a novel, all of this, we are like establish a new language. This new language it becomes so simply. This is what is life, so simply giving a simple rules for all. Just not make it complicated and having no dignity in it. The dignity is the simply, and this is what literature make it and establish it all the time, and which make a different characters for all, for men, for women, any gender. What I feel in my experience that all the time, like I am all the time, like I am dig very deeply in my language and establish these new words, which make the metaphors, which draw this image of the stories with different dimensions that determination, again, what is the new concepts that societies need. About the context, the context of all our speech. Media all the time cutting this image in small image they want to draw for people. Our responsibility that we have to draw this image with the right context, with the real context, without any cutting. And this is what literature make by stories, by poetry, by novel. We try all the time to draw the real context, not cutting. This cutting which make violence, which make this discriminations, all of this, just we can defend our right to make this connection in the spaces they cut and draw the image for all the world again.
Thank you. That's just brilliant. And it's so great to hear you guys exchanging as well. I wish we could go on forever, but I'm going to ask a question which has been put into the chat by William from Penn, Zimbabwe. It is not easy for men to appreciate works written by women here in Africa, simply because women are underrated. How much support do you get from men writers? And this question goes to either of you.
If the men writers support us, he mean?
Yeah. Oh, well, I think, yeah. I mean, in terms of your writing.
I want to say the opposite of this, that when I write about values. Values in the stories, it's about all, about women, men, women. By the way, I'm writing maybe some bad characters, good characters. The man can be a settler and can be a worker, a peasant, the woman the same. And so we are discussing values, not gender. And the value say if this gender have we are not equality with her or with him or not. But if men writers write about women, I think we have these examples in Palestine, by the way. They like to write about women because they think the woman is a revolution. And they are so proud of her role in the revolution and how she resists all the time. Even her rule was more big than now, but I think that we still have this men who respect this rule, even of all the extremist voices.
Thank you so much, both of you. Honestly, I am so thankful to you for this really engaging conversation, and I just wish we had more time, and I think maybe we'll have to invite you both back into our webinar series to really explore these, even then, you know, we've only just touched the top or the surface layer of a lot of this conversation. I think that, you know, you've also talked about the need for authentic engagement, the need for authentic inclusion. So I want to thank both Mona and Nayrouz. I know, Mona, that you needed to slip out. Just to say thank you very much. And we will continue the conversation with you as well. So thank you. And Nayrouz, I hope you can continue to stay with us. And if not, don't worry. But thank you so much for your time and your contribution today.
Thank you for being with all. I will try to keep with you. Just I have a little signal for internet, but I'm so happy for this discussion, and I'm so happy to see you, Mona.
Maybe we can continue the conversation between Nayrouz and Mona later on. As we now continue, what we want to do is essentially move this conversation from these individual stories, which are largely emblematic of the experience of many writers, of many women who want to access the world of writing or access the ability to explore their ideas in writing. And we're going to hand the conversation over to Wezi from PEN Malawi. PEN Malawi have been leading on a project called The Invisible Child, which some of you may be familiar with. This is a project where we have been working very closely together to help PEN Malawi understand how to use storytelling to shift gender norms. I want to hand the conversation over to PEN Malawi and to Wezi, where she will talk us, however, through the structural barriers which affect girls and young women as they engage with academia, primary school, secondary school, further education, as well as the work environment in Malawi. Now, we're wanting to engage PEN Malawi in this conversation, and I think that whilst this case study is focusing on the situation of girls and women in Malawi, I want to emphasize that this is not restricted. These issues, these structural issues, don't just present themselves in Malawi, but the world over, no matter which part of the world that we find ourselves in. In terms of the conversation beyond this, to help centres understand the structural issues which are impacting girls and young women, we will share the information that PEN Malawi will share with us today. However, we've also provided a comparative of the situation and the structural issues impacting girls and young women in India. So this will give us a start to give us a sense of the structural issues which are in different parts of the world, and for us to actually understand how these issues provide very tangible and intangible restrictions on the rights of a girl to access and fully enjoy her potential in her educational attainment. And Wezi will also talk about the kinds of restrictions that happen in the workplace, which mean that women are underrepresented or face greater and disproportionate challenges when wanting to pursue a career in writing. I hand the floor over to you. Please excuse my hay fever, but I hand the floor over to you, Wezi. It's really great to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much, Paminda, and thank you all for being here. Maria, could you help me share the screen? Thank you. Okay, so I will take you through the journey of a girl child in Malawi, from reception, primary school, secondary school, until she graduates, or college until she graduates, and then her professional life. So in Malawi, only 27% of children have access to early childhood education, and preschools are located primarily in the urban areas, leaving children in rural areas without access. And in rural areas, it is only after the child is 8 or 9, that's when they first experience the classroom, and that is primary school, and with no proper preparation. And in sub-Saharan Africa in general, about 33% of school-aged children do not attend school. Furthermore, for every 100 male sub-Saharan African students out of primary school, there are 123 female sub-Saharan African students not attending primary school. in Malawi particularly, research shows that female students are more likely to drop out of school than male Malawian students. And data indicates that Malawi has one of the highest school dropout rates in Southern Africa, among males particularly, among females, and 3 in every 20 Malawian girls leave primary school between standard 5 and standard 8. Now, what are the challenges? You may ask, what causes this? There are issues of long distances to and from school. Some are forced to travel up to 15 kilometers to school and 15 kilometers from school. And this makes them vulnerable to different types of harassment, including sexual harassment. There is also an issue of inadequate sanitation and hygiene facilities in schools. This becomes an issue, especially during menstruation. Changing rooms are very few in schools, and some schools actually don't have them. Some girls don't have access to sanitary materials, and this contributes to missing classes and eventually dropping out. Another challenge is the parental negative attitude towards the education of girls. They would rather have girls helping out in the home than send them to school. And as such, they show little or no interest in their daughter's schoolwork. Household responsibilities, these are chores, taking care of siblings and the like, also hinder the girl child from going to school. And teenage pregnancies or marriage due to force, some are forced by their parents or their relatives, peer pressure, they need to be considered relevant. Another issue is that of overage. Now, because of the long distances that I have already talked about, parents don't feel safe sending their children at an early age to school. And as a result, girls start school at an older age. This, of course, may apply to both boys and girls. However, as puberty catches up with the girls, they begin to lose interest in school, and some eventually drop out, opting for marriage. And as I've already given you a background of primary school, that as they reach to the final year of primary school, already girls are not as many as boys. Now coming to secondary school, school fees becomes an issue. And it applies to both boys and girls. However, already the ratio of the girl child is on the lower side, and they are also faced with this issue of school fees. They're still dropping out, making the ratio on the girl side lower than it was before. And also issues of teenage pregnancies and child marriages due to high poverty levels. Recently, there have been issues of COVID, so schools were closed. And then the Ministry of Gender, Community Development and Social Welfare estimates that almost 13,000 pregnancies and 40,000 marriages occurred within the first the first 6 months that schools were closed. So you can imagine this, how this impacts the girl child. And sexual exploitation by male teachers and peers poses as another challenge to the girl child. They exploited for money, they exploited for grades and the like. Inadequate hygiene facilities in schools, I think I've already talked about that. Poor performance by girls, and not necessarily that girls cannot do better. One of the initial speakers said that as she was in the class, the teacher said, okay, so you girls are going to sit here and you're going to be given education the type of education that is different from the rest, because you end up getting married anyway. And if some of those girls ended up getting married at 16, sometimes it's not because that's what you are, but it's because that's what you've been made to believe. So even this poor performance is not because these girls are not intelligent enough, but because they have been made to believe that they belong to the kitchen, their primary duties are to take care of the parent, of the husband, maybe of the kids at home, and nothing else. So working hard in class becomes a problem, hence the poor performance. And also lack of role models, especially in rural areas where most female teachers would rather not go there. Now, moving on to the university, already the number of girls is getting lower. I think from primary school, secondary school, and now the university. So the enrollment the boy enrollment is higher as compared to that of the girls. All right. I have an example there. I think I've put there's 3.7 to 2.0 in one of the universities in Malawi. Also, they are faced with issues of high poverty levels, for some leading to failure to complete studies or to graduate, and others resort to prostitution because as it is, they have to pay for accommodation, they have to pay for their food. How are they going to survive? They have to find means of survival if they are to complete their education. So the problems are not just in the primary school, as you can see, not just in the secondary school, but even at the university level, they are followed by these challenges. And even if they pursue a literature course, very few graduate to become writers. I, for one, pursued a literature course, but of the 25 students that graduated, only a few became writers. And this writing is not a core thing, or it's not the main thing for them. It's not the main thing for us. It's something that comes secondary. Now, coming to the workplace, are we supported enough? Or even if we were to pursue writing, is there support from male writers? That's the question that we keep asking even today. And also the issue of sexual harassment to secure jobs and higher positions. Bosses will tend to demand sex for a position at the workplace. And also if somebody wants to be promoted, they will demand sex from a woman. Again, another challenge is that we have to go through as women is that of tripling being a wife, a mother, and a career woman. You have to make sure you balance all this, and sometimes it is not easy to take care of the home and to take care of the kids. At the same time, you're trying to make sure that you're a star at your workplace. It's not easy, and especially when the husband is not supportive, because most husbands are not supportive. They're like, okay, when it comes to taking care of the home, it's the duty of the woman. We are not involved. He is working, she is working. He is employed, she is employed, or she is pursuing a certain career or whatnot. But apart from that, she also has to take full responsibilities of the home and of the husband or the partner. And we have issues of male-dominated workplaces, and there is a tendency to objectify the few females in the place. I think I've had personal experience in this. I've worked in a few places where there are 16 men and I am the only lady. There are 20 men and I'm the only lady. Some comments, some decisions that are made, you actually know that they would not be made in that way if I were to be a man. And then when it comes to the writing industry, like as I already mentioned, it is dominated by men. A few women have risen to the task, yes, but as it is, there are more male writers than there are female writers. Sometimes it's the issue of support. Sometimes the woman is unsure if their work matches with the standard. So we have stacks and stacks of manuscripts, but we do not have the courage to take them out to the public. How do these challenges come about? How do they come about? There are these beliefs that that bring them. For example, there's a belief that man is the head of the house. Asking boys to help with household chores equals raising weak men. And so all the chores are headed on the shoulders of the girl child or on the shoulders of the women. And then in some cultures, girls are seen as a source of wealth for their parents. And upon being married off, the parents receive dowry from the man's side. So why waste money on education when there's an easy way of making money through these girls? Let's just marry them off. And then there are also these challenges of maybe women being responsible, the belief that women are responsible for taking care of the husband and the kids, regardless of whether they work or not, and they don't get support from men at all. And also girls or women are generally less intelligent than boys, and some subjects are dominated by boys or men. This is a belief, not something that is true on the ground. And the men use this to suppress the girl child or the woman. And because this is a language that has, because this is a diction that we have, that has been said about us, we tend to believe it, and then we tend to live by it. And also, there's a popular belief that men make better decisions as compared to women. Having said all this, deliberate efforts to change the situation are there. Strides are there. Beautiful stories are told about the wins we have gained this far. But there's still a long way to go for the Malawian girl child. What are we going to do about it? That's the question that remains. Thank you very much, Paminda.
Thank you so much, Wezi. That was just really informative. And I think that you have just hit the nail on the head in terms of what are we going to do about it and how do we approach this issue? How do we ensure inclusion? How do we ensure authentic inclusion? How do we ensure that the space is, the engagement that we do is based on all the right principles in a way which involves and engages everybody? This is not about leaving anybody out of the conversation. This is not about women writing for women. This is about women writing as writers and for everybody, in the same way that girls being given the space to express their ideas without fear, without censorship, without the feeling that they need to self-censor. So I really thank you for your contribution today. It's very, very crucial. Now, as we are running slightly over time, I want to hand the floor over to Tanya, who is going to talk to us about the global Vida count that was initiated by the Women Writers Committee. And Tanya, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Share, let me just find all right. Okay, sorry, I will immediately amend this. No, sorry, let me just, There we go. Can you see now the presentation?
Yes, thanks, Tanya.
Yes, I will go very quickly, and I will ask maybe Maria and Pamida that they share this presentation later on.
Yeah, is it possible just to make it slightly bigger? I think it's just perhaps.
Okay, can you do it, Maria? I'm sort of technically I'm not very gifted. No?
Nor am I.
Yes, but I will need the link to the presentation, or I will need the presentation in order to share
you
it.
Have the link. I will give it just after I speak so that we don't lose so much more time.
Yes, but what I mean is I don't have it at hand because I wasn't planning to share it, so I need the link. Or let me check for the link. Sorry.
Yeah, you have it from Paulo.
Yes.
But do you see mine now? Huh? No?
We see yours, it's fine. I think let's just
okay, let's go on. Yeah.
Let's just proceed, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So Vida count, I will give you the link to the original Vida count that was really about, not only about the awards, but also about the literary criticism, about the appearances, etc., about the characters in the books and in the novels. And what is it? It's a numerical presentation actually of inequity. And we focused in Women Writers Committee, we focused at the beginning on the prizes. For 5 years, 10 most important prizes in your country to be let's say scrutinized whether they are given to women or men, who is shortlisted, etc. Why? Because as we saw with Wes's presentation, numbers are very important. We need to see the numbers first, and then we can react towards them. And every Penn Center can do it. About 20 have done already, and some will do it probably until the next Congress. How much time do you need to do it? You have to prepare these numbers in advance, but it can be done then in a day of two. This form is very easy to answer. You will have your presentation, this presentation shared, and there is a QR code or a link that you can follow. And there is also some instruction how to do it. Or in cases you're not sure, you have now 2 emails, or you can also use mine and I can help you. The first focus was on women, but as we had this possibility to question people, we also asked about non-binary and unidentified writers. So here are the centers who gave us that data. You can see Afrikaans, so thank you very much. I don't know whether it was you, Katrina, that did it, but it's nice to have the data. And from Americas, we have Canada, Quebec, USA, Asia Pacific, Myanmar in such difficult circumstances, thank you so much. And European, of course, there were more results, also from Russia, which is really important. So if you look the overall account of these 20 centers, it looks, well, not so bad, let's say. 45% of women are shortlisted, 54 got the award. And you can see that, let's say, it's not that balanced, but it's okay. But if you look at the specific countries, Portugal is okay. It's not so bad, but, well, it could be better. South Africa is different. And this trend is very, very, let's say, this trend will show probably elsewhere as well. Because with all this raising hostilities, hate speech, even wars, conflicts, we see in Ukraine, we see conflicts within the American society. With all this decreasing of women's rights, right to abortion, right to read and roam and do whatever she wants, I think we will see these numbers failing elsewhere as well, not only in South Africa. So Canada, you can see, is okay. Myanmar is very difficult. They are, well, in 2020, there was obviously some female winners, but before very few.
Tanya, do you mind just going to the page, because your page is on the video count, the number of the centers which took part. So,
all right, yes, I can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Here
Sorry,
we go.
Tanya, if you wanna also share it bigger in view on the top, you can check it. But if not, it's fine. Just you can change manually.
Okay, if I could do it. It's not a show. How can I do it? I'm sorry.
Yes, please. You can...
I was just about to finish, really. So maybe
okay. So
I finish and get off and stop sharing the page, and just okay. you just because there's no point in going into all this. What do we get from it? This is important. I think we get the picture of what happens in our country or elsewhere. And if we were looking at Slovenia, in Slovenia, some 10 years ago, we introduced a specific award only for women writers, for women, and it changed a lot because also men in other juries saw that women do write high quality literatures and started to appreciate them. Well, of course, I cannot not mention Women's Manifesto, because that was the trigger to present the bid account, actually. So I think we have all to do in that we have to follow that path and continue to gather more data, etc. Now, let me just close this and stop sharing. And now I can, because you will have it. And please, if you have any questions, how to do it, or let me know. That's it. Taminder.
Thank you so much, Tanya. That was really, really helpful. And, you know, like we said, if anybody is looking to do this count, then please feel free to contact Tanya or myself so that we can help facilitate this space for you and help guide you in terms of how to fill out the survey. But I just wanted to, for literally 2 minutes, because I recognize that we're running out of time, is also draw your attention to a count which focused on Latin America. PEN International received some money from UNESCO to focus in on Latin America a bit more deeply through the study. And through the study, the VIDA count study, we looked at 5 Latin American countries: Guatemala, Chiapas in Mexico, Ecuador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Now, this study was both a quantitative and a qualitative study. And what it enabled us to do was to interview a range of women who were either writers or worked in the publishing industry or had some sense of the literary awards and how they were presented, for us to understand that process a bit more closely. Now, just in terms of trying to understand the structural challenges, I want to say that having a very short kind of study on this does not do any justice to the subject matter that we really need to, and the understanding that we need to grasp from our analysis. This was just a first layer of examination. We are trying to look at ways by which we can dig in deeper into the conversation, into what has been happening in these 5 countries. But just to give you just a very brief summary of the key issues that we found coming up through this examination and scrutiny. As we had thought and we had assumed, women writers and journalists, as well as women in the publishing industry, face specific risks and additional challenges due to their gender, where other interrelated factors aggravate this discrimination. So what does this mean? This means that if you're a woman, or if you're an Indigenous woman, and if you're an Indigenous woman writer who perhaps is disabled or has any other intersecting layers of identity within, in terms of her personal self, this could aggravate the discrimination that you faced from publishers, from the mainstream literary spaces, from various actors within this industry. Going on to the next fact, I'm so sorry that I'm having to cut this short, but I'm just really conscious that everybody has given so much time already, and I just want to respect our timelines. But obviously feel free to come back to myself, or I can also ensure that I think that Maria has also put in a link, or Tanya's put in a link to the VIDA count, and we can also share a link to the VIDA count that was done specifically in these 5 Latin American countries. Now, in terms of public policies, these provide the political framework for publishing as well as accessing culture. In terms of our initial examination of these policies that was had through the conversation that we had with these spectrum of women who exist and work in this workspace, they were very clear that these policies lack the conceptual and practical strength to promote and guarantee equal participation. So we can see from this that not only are the numbers low on the lower side, and we have come back to this with the VIDA count, with the conversations that we've been having today, but the actual policies which should guarantee equal participation, either through collusion or through acquiescence or from absence or neglect, fail to respond to the gender realities of diverse women today. In terms of gender and diversity equality in the editorial houses, in the editorial policies of independent and private media and publishing houses, these were largely absent. So, let alone not actually ensuring equality in editorial policy, there was an absence of any sense of gendered or diverse equality and a gendered and diverse lens through this approach. So as we can see from the conversations that we have had today, that when you go to school or when you go to primary school or secondary school or university, really, if you have managed to make it through all of that, and then you've managed to make it into the writing world, that is not the end of your challenge. The challenges are still only, those challenges are still only mounting. So when you go into the workplace, you are faced, as Wesley has said, with sexual harassment, the idea that you will sleep or you will have sex with whoever is commissioning your work, the idea that you are, as a woman, having to curtail your ideas and your imagination, the idea, as we've heard from Mona, that you fit into certain boxes and certain narratives, are all things that present time and time and time and time again institutional approaches to women's writing. And this cannot be dealt with through individual action, and it can be, but it also needs to be dealt with institutionally. It requires institutional responses to these issues to be able to give these voices the space, to give this imagination also legitimacy to be explored in this mainstream, in our mainstream kind of spaces that we have. Now, obviously, we have digital platforms which are changing, to some extent have changed the nature of this engagement, in that we have the ability of women, for example, in Latin America, have been using the online space to self-publish. But there are so many crucial questions that we still need to ask within this context when we have the kind of trolling and the kind of pushback against women's voices in the digital sphere, with the frequency, the intensity of threats, and with the kind of depth of threats and the perniciousness of threats that is made in the public space called social media platforms. So there is a lot to be done, there's a lot to be dissected, there is a lot to be understood. But what we want to do essentially through the conversation that we have had today is start to think about the role that PEN centres can play in this conversation. As many of you or some of you may know, I am trying to lead this program of work through the organisation with our team. This is not an individual effort, it's a collective effort on all of our parts. We have had some programmatic work through the Invisible Child that we are trying to do, and we will see how we can extend and learn from the lessons about how to engage with young children, young women, young girls, about their attitudes, about their ability to access their thought, their ability to write, their ability to explore their own ideas in a context where freedom of expression is gendered. Freedom of expression is not just about the state. Freedom of expression is about being able to say what you think in a safe and responsible environment where we also are aware of the words that we use and the sense and the knowledge that words can also harm. So, as critical players in the world, as PEN centres who are contributing to civil society and shaping and contributing to policy interventions, it is essential that we start engaging with this discussion around gender and diversity in inclusive and authentic ways. Now, what we have done is that we've prepared a draft approach on how to ensure that our spaces, both internal and external meetings, and are inclusive in bringing a range of voices. We would very much like you to read this draft as part of our next phase of ongoing discussions on gender and diversity. Maria will email you all with this paper. I would really heavily urge you all to engage with this draft. It is a draft, and it's basically wanting to just acknowledge the international sphere in which we work. So it's not very specific, but what it will do is give you the brief apparatus that we require to ensure that as PEN centres, when we are going out to our constituencies, when we are going to try and include more people within this conversation, as we try and provide access to literature, as we try and provide access to mainstream spaces, that we do not reinforce existing hierarchies, that we use a conscious approach to enabling conversation in ways which is authentic and inclusive. And with that final piece, I just want to say thank you so much to Tanya. So thank you so much to Wezi. Your presentations were so fantastic and have enabled this space and this conversation. Our speakers were brilliant, and I think that they have just shared some of the stories that are out there. So we will continue our conversations through the webinar format. We look forward to any engagement that you may wish to have with either myself, or Romana, or Maria. We are here to continue this conversation, so please feel free to come back to us. The paper will be sent out to you on the draft guidelines about how to ensure inclusive dialogue will be sent out to you once Maria emails you. Please respond to us. The deadline on this paper is the 7th of July for any feedback that you may have. And please, this is a learning exercise for just as much for me as it is for everybody else. I will learn from your feedback because it will allow me to understand your grassroots realities. So please do feed in, please give me feedback, because it will ensure that when this becomes much more solid as an approach that PEN International should be taking throughout the world, then it will represent and feel something that you can implement at grassroots and enables you to open up dialogue with people that have never approached PEN before. So I want to say thank you very much for your time today, and let's keep in contact.
Yes, sorry, just one thing. We had foreseen to have a 5-minute discussion, but because it's a bit late, what we can do, Paminda, is stay with the people who want to ask something and who needs to leave. Thank you very much, as Paminda said, for your participation. It was really great to see so many old faces and new faces as well.
Yeah. Does everybody want to stay?
No, I have to leave. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I have to leave, but I think this kind of smaller meetings, they are so fruitful. So thank you so much for organizing it.
Yeah,
and I'm sorry for my technical inadequacy for this century. I think I should have stayed in the former century.
Me too, Tanya, don't worry.
But not for women's rights, not for women's rights.
And thank you, especially Tanya, for joining us with so short.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Thank you. Yeah. Goodbye. We have, by the way, I was talking about the Slovenian Mira prize, the prize for, let's say, something very special for the last year. Every year we give it out. We have Luna, my colleague here, who is the youngest winner of this prize in Slovenia. Last year she won the prize, yeah. So, but this changed a lot. It's not like, it's important because once a year, it really promotes one woman to the limits. So it changed also with other prizes, but maybe I can respond to your paper in this way and tell you more about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya. And does anybody want to stay and to ask questions of Wezi, or have any questions that areas that weren't addressed? Or shall we close it, wrap it up? Wrap it up? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your time. And I look forward to continuing conversation with you all. Thank you.